Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I'm honored to have Kevin Kassis with me. Kevin is an NFL athlete, football player. He also has his own company that he's starting and is an entrepreneur, and he does modeling. Basically, the guy does it all. But I think one of the things you're going to hear about in his story today is when you have resilience, you can accomplish a lot. So, Kevin, thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. This is gonna be fun.
Absolutely. So to start off your story, grew up in California, and you say, "Hey, I remember watching highlights of like Jerry Rice and Walter Payton." So talk a little bit about getting started, and finding a love and passion for football.
Yeah, totally. I credit that to my dad. He's a big Walter Payton fan. We grew up in Northern California, so Joe Montana. We're actually more of a Steve Young family, anyways, because my dad thinks he's a lefty as well. Yeah, I grew up in NorCal. He kind of indoctrinated those guys early on to me. So, big Niner fan growing up, and then he always loved Walter Payton too. He says that's the greatest running back of all time. So now that's my greatest running back of all time too. So that's kind of
There it
that
is.
that happened.
Unanimous decision amongst the family then.
Yeah, totally. Whatever he kind of told me growing up, I kind of just ran with it, and whatever dad said was correct.
You bet. Now, I think there's something to, highlight within a sports journey. And there's kids that grow up and their parents have to tell them to go work out or, have to tell them to get to practice. There's other kids that it just becomes something they're passionate about and they, kind of fall in love with the game and being able to play it. So talk a little bit about, your life experiences and, maybe the certain times where you started to realize, hey, this is more than just something that I like to do at, recess with my friends. It's something I really want to work at.
Yeah, totally. So I played a bunch of sports growing up, soccer, baseball, all that stuff. But football was always that one sport where I just loved it. Probably got instilled in me growing up from my dad, and it became one of those things where early on it was like we all have those goals. Hey, I want to be in the NFL someday. I want to do something like that. Big dreams, I think even with even my parents just instilled in me at a young age. You know, you got to put the work in. You're gonna get in order to get the results. So I can remember just working out with my dad. I mean, in elementary school, super young, and then I kind of like just became a habit. Doing something at a young age, you kind of just stuck with it, and then they were almost kind of more hands off as I got older and whatnot too. But they kind of had just instilled those habits in me. So I almost like the process more than game day. I mean, even now to this day, it's like uh, I like working out, and do all that stuff just because whatever. Maybe I still think I'm playing, which I'm not, but no, I just kind of learned to really enjoy the process.
That's so important. And I think, once again, we're talking about it right now in the scope of football or athletics. But I mean, I think that goes to being a parent, being a significant other, whatever you're doing as a profession. It's like if you're only enjoying the highlight moments, that's going to be a really tough relationship or a really tough pursuit versus if you can enjoy everything that goes into getting to some of those highlight moments.
Yeah, totally. I even think about it even more. It's like I can even remember, working out with my dad and him, saying, there's a kid in over down the street who's maybe working harder than you or stuff like that. So almost like there's almost some aspect of fear too,
Mm.
of like, kind of buying into, preparing myself. There's separation in the preparation. So that was just something where I was almost scared. I didn't want to be out prepared and I think for my mental clarity to putting that work in, kind of you have kind of something to fall back on as well when things get tough or when you're strapping the pads on to run out the tunnel.
I love that. Yes. Now, for you, and just kind of, talking about your high school career, you go to a high school that has other notable players, right? Some Notre Dame, commits
Yeah.
and players and things of that nature. So, talk a little bit about, surrounding yourself with other high level, high caliber players and just the level of expectation that then comes from that.
Yeah, that's actually funny. I was telling you earlier, I was in Austin this weekend, and that's who I was with. I'm with my high school buddies who, one of them went and played, at Notre Dame. He's still kind of in and out in the NFL right now. But I was surrounded by a good group of guys growing up, and then playing with those guys from when we're just little kids all the way up through high school. You kind of build that connection and whatnot. So yeah, I think even with regards to even getting into high school, whatnot, and even taking a step back as I was younger, I always had, I was always pretty coordinated from a skill set standpoint, but then you kind of get into those high school, whatever, you're growing and whatnot. And I didn't grow. I kind of stayed kind of small and wasn't the fastest guy and kind of didn't hit my growth spurt until college. So I wasn't a guy who was heavily recruited. I had the skills. I had the skill set to do it. Just the coach, obviously, when you're looking at a, soaking wet 150 pound, white wide receiver, they don't get a lot of coaches, knocking on your door.
Yeah. Well, so talk a little bit about, getting to play at a high level in high school and then, the process of figuring out where you want to go. Because to your point, hey, it wasn't maybe I'm picking between Bama, UCLA, all those, but you had quite a few different walk-on options. And so, you still had opportunities and you got to find what's the right fit or what's the best fit going to be for Kevin.
Yeah, totally. And that was an interesting process too. Um, because I knew I could do it. It was just, and I understand me from a coach's standpoint. It's like you've got this kid who's a little bit undersized, not the fastest guy. Yeah, he's got the skills to do it, but I mean, these guys this is how they feed their family. So now looking back, I have an understanding of that. Maybe at that such a point in my life, I didn't understand why. Why am I not going to Bama? Why?
Yeah.
but, um, but yeah, and it's almost I look back too, and I'm kind of glad I wasn't, super heavily recruited. And it was an interesting process too, because I went through my whole senior season, had a pretty good year, and I didn't even know if I was going to play college football
Mm.
until late in the process. Because like you mentioned, I was getting some walk-on opportunities, but from some decent size, some big schools, some Pac-12 schools. But for some reason, I don't know why, I just didn't. I was like, dude, I'm just going to go there and be the practice dummy. So
Yeah.
which was weird because growing up, my dream was always play at UCLA, play at the big school. And for some reason, it just at that time, I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to go just walk on, the biggest school. And so kind of late in my recruiting process in January, I got a call from which is school I went to, Montana State,
Yeah.
just a random 406 area code, and got on the phone and just it's funny too, just the connection I had built with the coaching staff and went up there for a visit. It's freezing cold, snowing, and somehow I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna go play there. I got a little bit of help financially, and I had good grades in college or in high school, so I got a little bit of help. But I was pretty much walking on. It's out of state, so it's expensive to go there. But for some reason, I was like, you know what, that's where I'm gonna go. I just trust the people that are there, and I'm so happy I did.
Yeah. So talking about that, and once again, I could be completely wrong, but from what I understood, that one of the coaches that ends up at Montana State had been recruiting a different guy in your team and just knew a little bit about you and your skill set and all those different attributes. And one thing I wanted to highlight there is just you never know who's going to be impacted by what you're doing, right?
Totally.
You could have said, "Oh, well, they're not here to see me. Who cares?" But at the end of the day, because you made some sort of an impression, right, while they were there, it's like, well, that opened a whole new door for you. So, talk maybe a little bit about that. Preparing for something even when it doesn't seem like you're in the spotlight or it's your time to shine.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny too because one of my, like I mentioned, my good buddy was the quarterback. I mean, he's committed to go to Notre Dame, so it's not his fault. But I'm sure a lot of schools were like, I mean, dude, you got a Notre Dame quarterback. He should be. He's probably putting the ball right on you, and whatnot too, which he was. I mean, he's really good, and he made me a lot better for sure. But but yeah, and that recruiting world is so small. I mean, then once you're in it, like you're at the school and you can kind of see the inside of how the whole recruiting process works. It's just so interconnected and small. So I believe it was my receiver coach who was at Boise State at the time. He was a GA and he had gotten a job at Montana State. And the quarterback who had pretty heavy recruited my buddy. He was originally going to go between Boise State and Washington State. He actually ended up committing to Washington State, and then he got a Notre Dame offer. So obviously, I mean, you can't turn that down. So he
Right.
ended up flipping and going over there. But through that process with like Boise State and all those schools, and then my receiver coach going to Montana State, I think that's kind of where it all connected. And he'd always have teams come out and watch, and so I'd go out there and just throw with them, just so maybe hopefully catch someone's eye.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a really interesting process, and I think you're going through that, and you're the guy that guys are kind of overlooking, and kind of looking back, that's kind of probably was the best thing for me moving forward as well. Nothing ever, just given to me. I always have to earn it, and always kind of have that chip on my shoulder.
So there's an interesting dynamic there. There's the hindsight that you have today where you can look back and you're like, I'm kind of thankful that that's the way it played out. And at the same token, I'm
Yes.
sure part of you while that's occurring is like, what the heck? Like, I'm putting in the work. I've got good numbers, right? Like I'm showing up. Why am I not getting the same opportunity? So I guess the question I'd have is, rewinding the clock years and thinking about it, how do you stay confident in yourself even when you're maybe not getting the same, opportunities that you feel like the work you're putting in should be warranting?
Yeah, that's a great question. I just think I don't know, maybe I was just dumb. I didn't like really, but this is actually good. This is a good story too. So once I commit, I'm walking on to Montana State. Um, a lot they bring in basically all their guys, during that summer period so they can train and do all that. So I remember I committed, whatever, high school's over, and I'm texting the coaches. I'm like, hey, when am I coming to when are the summer workouts starting? They're like, oh no, you're not coming until like the first day of training camp. So I'm like, oh gosh, here I go again. I'm gonna be the I was, this is what I didn't want to happen. I didn't want to go up and show and be the practice dummy, but
Yeah.
I don't know why. I didn't really I maybe thought that for a second, and then I think that was the best thing for me because that whole summer working out, it was just like I was just like had this little narrow focus where it was just like I had one goal in mind, just go in there and just prove myself. And that was probably the best thing for me because it really lit that fire, underneath me. And I wanted to show up and be the best guy, which I think it paid dividends for sure.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny you say that. I had a gentleman on the show, and he went to Iowa State and walked on and all that. And it's funny because he goes, "Yeah, the first day they gave me a jersey and it was like number 103." And he goes, "Maybe in college you have digits that go, or numbers that go three digits. I thought it was only up to two, but maybe in college you get three." And they go, "No, you're a walk on. You get a three-digit number. The two digits are reserved for everyone else." He's like, "Got it."
Yeah, no, that's funny too because luckily I got a two-digit number, but I mean it was the number I actually ended up wearing uh, my entire career just because I kind of like the idea of them just handing me some. They gave me number 85, which I was like, what which ends up actually got a little bit. I got it tattooed on me because it's a little reminder that I kind of just love the idea of it and just showing up and just throwing me in probably the last number no one anybody wanted and yeah, so there's so many things. I'll just let my fight, let the fire underneath me, and luckily it ended up working out.
Yeah. So as you get there, like you mentioned, hey, going from high school to college, you got weight to gain, you got, speed to improve on, all the different things. And, talk a little bit about maybe the first year or two, inside the program and just, kind of getting settled in and growing and developing.
Yeah, so even to take a step back, uh, like I had mentioned, so yeah, I was definitely a little bit undersized, needed to get faster, but I had the skill set to play,
Yeah.
which so I had the fundamentals, which so I just for whatever reason I was like I can go in there and play. I'm now thinking back and I'm in looking from my perspective of like, being in the program and seeing guys that come in, there's like, hey, you're showing up at training camp. Like those guys have no shot at playing. So it's kind of funny that, and obviously I didn't realize that when I first got there, but uh, I just went in and hit the ground running. Luckily the stars got kind of aligned in the sense that I came in with a brand new coaching staff. They had been not very good, going through a rebuild. So they were looking. So guys were leaving, and new crop of guys were coming in. So kind of there was opportunity.
Yeah.
And then I just went in and just started playing pretty well. And the next thing you know, and I'm a month later, I'm starting at punt return. I'm returning kicks, and then 2 games in, I'm starting at receiver, um, which is kind of crazy. Which is like you would have told me 4 months earlier, I didn't even think I was going to be playing football in college. And next thing um, started playing as a freshman, started, and then from there on, just kind of ran with it.
Yeah. So you said it a couple of times. I think you said maybe I was just too dumb or whatever it is, but it's like there is a blissful ignorance, right? Where you say, yeah, if I wrote this out, no one would tell me that I've got a strong chance to play. But the one part that gets discounted is how bad you want it, right?
Mhm.
And I'm sure you even saw it in your years at Montana State. There's plenty of guys that probably came in with a similar storyline as you, and they just didn't want it as bad, right? And all of a sudden you
Totally.
see them 2 years later, it just didn't work out. I'm just going to move on. And once again, I don't want to discredit your natural skill set, right? And how good you were, but also there's something about the mentality that gave you the opportunity as well.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, I remember being there, and they're getting some guys coming in who are their big recruit, who were coming in to replace me. And it's just funny. It's like some of those guys would come in, and next thing you know, they're not even in the program a year from later, just because, just their mindset, and you could just see it. They just felt comfortable. I mean, I
Mhm.
felt like my whole 4 years there, I was uncomfortable. Every offseason, it was like, man, I'm losing my job. Like, I'm scared. I'm going into my senior year and my junior senior year, and I'm the number one receiver, and it's like I'm scared to death that I'm going to lose my job, which I think internally, like, it drove me. So it was like, in the summertime, I'm not going to Rave Fest or whatever everyone's going to, or these country concerts. It's like I'm working out, and we're running. Luckily, I had a really good buddy on my team who, through all the offseason stuff, me and him kind of broke off and just trained our butts off, after the fact, after our team workouts and stuff like that. So there was just so much work that went in. It just shows. It's like you put in, the deposits, you put them in, you're going to get something in return. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, just a fun process. And looking back, it's like so much work went in and got a lot of good stuff in return.
I love that. Now, one of the things that you got in return, and I think anyone that played sports just would echo this, that it might be one of the biggest compliments, and that is to be a team captain.
Hmm.
And I think it was going into your junior year, you become a team captain. And just talk about that. I mean, I think that's once again one of the biggest compliments you can get, right? Usually there's an element of you have to be pretty good at what you do. Otherwise, most guys
Yeah.
don't, view you in that light, but you also have to be a heck of a leader, right? Someone that people want to emulate or be like. Otherwise, if you're just good at what you do, those guys usually don't get the captain. So talk a little bit about that and that piece of your pie.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it even gives me chills now because it was such a big honor, especially getting it as, a junior as well.
Yeah.
You've just even mentioned going in on the walk-on guy. We don't even know if I'm going to even make the team. Um, and it's next, a couple years later, I get voted as a team captain, which was huge. And it was like, just a testament to, the work that I put in. And I wasn't, you know, especially early on, even thinking back growing up, maybe I wasn't the most vocal guy,
Yeah.
but then I kind of grew into that role.
Mm.
And I kind of had kept my head down, especially in my college, my freshman, sophomore year, put the work in. I think people noticed that. And then when, I had kind of built that credibility, I had, I got voted team captain. It kind of allowed me to, get into that vocal role, which, I didn't anticipate, but, something that I felt comfortable doing. And honestly, it kind of helped with even going forward. Now I look back and it's like, man, being able to take on a leadership role where I'm vocal, keeping guys in line and in check, was huge for me and even my personal development as well.
I love that. Now, so a topic that I'm super passionate about, I want to dive into your thoughts on it just because of a couple of comments you made is the difference between leadership and having influence, right? I think
Hmm.
oftentimes you become a leader when you get a title or people view it that way. But you can have influence even before you have a title, right? And I would imagine that what people saw, the hard work you were doing in the off season, even as a freshman, as a sophomore, was having influence. Maybe it was, your buddy, right? That you said, hey, we worked our tails off together. But there's that influence you can have even before there's a title. But there is also that, to your point, that credibility you build up when you get the title, right? When you become a
Hmm.
team captain, instantly people are like, all right, I may not know Kevin. I might have only just met him last week at training camp, but like, if he's the captain, he's obviously earned the respect of the team. And so that does give you an inherent confidence boost. But talk a little about, the influence you had even before you became a leader and how that probably ended up leading to, you getting the title of a captain.
Yeah, totally. And this is what I even tell some guys who are either going to college or they're on their high school team or whatnot too, and they're new, they're entering a new program. It's just like there's kind of different stages to it. It's like you can't go in there. It's funny. We've all seen these guys who come in as freshmen, super loud, super cocky, and you lose the respect of the the
Mm.
upperclassmen, the guys who have been there and been doing it. So, and I didn't even know. I mean, I was just kind of a shy, kind of introverted guy going into school. I'm super scared. I'm nervous. Don't even know if I'm gonna make the team. I'm the walk on. So really, that first year it was like I don't even know if I talked. Kid put my head down and just worked out.
Yeah.
And it's actually funny too, because once I get to know people and the kind of the joke was like Kevin was so quiet like his first year. He didn't even talk. And then next thing you know, I'm super outgoing and built a good relationship with guys. But that's kind of how it worked. That first initial stage was keep my head down and grind. I'm the walk on. No one believes in me. I got to prove myself day in and day out. And then kind of kept that mentality going. But then it's like I think people just started to notice that. And then uh, even to your point, I mean, I wasn't the big rah-rah guy, but when I did have something to say, I think people respected that because they had
Mm.
seen all the work and preparation I had put in. And
Yeah.
then kind of around that junior year when it was time to vote people captain, it was kind of like a no-brainer. People were like, yeah, Kevin's the leader, Kevin's the guy. I mean, I kind of started to then kind of get my voice and be able to have a little bit of influence over guys. But it's just over process, and that stuff doesn't happen overnight. And it just kind of and I think when it's most influential is when it's organic too.
Mm.
And I was so bought into that program and that state. It gives me chills to this day because we actually have our big rivalry game against the other team across a couple hours down the highway, which I'm not going to say it because they don't. Um, I'm still passionate about this rivalry, but for whatever reason I'm super bought in. I think people could see that from me. I'm a guy from California, playing in Montana, and
Yeah.
and I felt that connection with the state and the program. So it was all super organic. So I think when it was time to become a leader and a captain, it just made sense. And then I was able to really use my voice and help us try to chase going after championships and whatnot too.
Yeah. So on the team side, once again, we've focused a lot on your story, but on the team side, to your point, you come into a program that's going through a coaching change, not a program that's been, competing for national titles or anything. And by the time you're done, I mean, you're playing against North Dakota State, who, I mean, is just pumping out NFL quarterbacks every year, it seems like.
Totally.
And you guys are playing against them. I think it was either in the championship or the semis. So
Hmm.
talk a little bit about just seeing the tide turn of the team dynamic, alongside your personal accomplishments while you're there.
Yeah, totally. Which was super fun looking back on and seeing uh, from going from my freshman year to my senior year. I think my freshman year we won 4 games. The next year we won 5 games. My junior year we went to the playoffs, and my senior year we're in the final four. So it was a really cool process from a team aspect as well. And it's kind of one of those things too where you think about college football in today's day and age, and you know people are throwing the ball 50, 60 times a game. When I was there, that really wasn't the case. I think I had 5 different quarterbacks. We struggled finding that position. I mean, we had games where I think we completed a pass or two. And I think that's where almost as well I started to gain that respect for my teammates, even looking back to that previous question talking about leadership, because uh, I'll be honest, at some points I wasn't too happy. I wanted to get the ball a little bit more, but I kind of bought into the fact that hey, we're not going to be throwing the ball that much. We're running the ball, so I'm going to go out there and block my butt off, and then when I do get my opportunities, I'm going to make the most of it. And I think that's where I gained a lot of respect too, because I'm the number one wide receiver on the team. We're not throwing the ball, and people know I should be getting the ball. But hey, you know what? We're rushing for 400 yards this game, and I'm going to be out there blocking for you guys. So kind of buying into that whole team aspect as well.
Yeah. So, from maybe it's a coaching standpoint, I always think, and we joked about earlier, I'm in Nebraska. And so we're, trying to turn a program around, and we've had,
Mhm.
4 different coaches come in and they can't do it. But I think you hit the nail on the head with 2 different points you made. One was you bought in, like you love Montana State, right? I mean, like you became a part of the culture. It wasn't like, well, I'm here for 4 years and I'm gonna leave. It's like, no, this is my place. But I would imagine that there's probably that buy-in and that feeling from the coaches to the players as well. So, talk a little bit about maybe some of the leadership things you saw from coaches that you maybe noticed a trend in. Hey, we started here. not great, but over time and with, some of the principles or things they taught us, we were able to kind of change the culture into a winning culture.
Yeah. So when I came in as a freshman, I came in with a new staff. The staff that recruited me. The head coach, his name is Jeff Cho. I mean, I could go on and on about him, but and I was with them luckily for 4 years. Which even thinking about now, and you look in college football and all that stuff, how many coaching changes there are and all that. I was so lucky to basically be with good core portion of that staff for my whole 4 years, which was super cool because things didn't happen overnight. We just, it's kind of funny even looking back. We used to say, our freshman year, you lose big, which was true. We weren't very good. My sophomore year, you lose small. We lost so many tight games. That my junior year, the year after that, win small, which we did. We made the playoffs. We're definitely a better team, and then we were starting to win big my senior year, which is
Yes.
something so cool. We used to talk about that, like, hey, this is going to be a process. Things aren't going to happen overnight.
Mm.
This is kind of how it might shake out, and it kind of went down that exact kind of pathway. And too, there was a lot of development from personal development from our head coach, week in and week out, which I think some of us maybe it went one ear out the other. We're kind of like, dude, let's get out of here. It's late at night. But I think that stuff really stuck with me as well. And you say, all coaches are always like, it's more than just football, and we want to be able to develop these guys, outside of the game. But I really felt like he did. And I think a lot of guys. It's funny. I'll see some of my old teammates. We'll joke about it too, because it's like it was so ingrained in us.
Yeah.
But just all really good stuff. And he was just a super good guy, and he's still coaching this day. He's at the University of Texas, so he's no longer at Montana State. But yeah, just from the coaches to the players to the culture that we built. I mean, you can just see because we're kind of went in. Culture wasn't great early on, and you can kind of build it over throughout the years, and then I think it's even continuing to this day, even with the new staff.
Yes. So your career kind of comes to a close in a interesting landscape of the world at this point, though. And so,
Hmm.
you're like, hey, I've got the skills, I've gained some weight, I'm faster, I'm stronger. I would like to do a pro day and see, where the chips may fall. And then this thing called COVID happened. So talk a little bit about just the you know, season of that life for you and just, where the mentality was of, hey, things are going really well, but then things completely outside of my control are adding a huge blip in the radar.
Yeah, totally. I ended up having a decent career. Like I said, we weren't a super pass heavy team, but I ended up having a pretty good career, and I was ready to go. I mean, after that final season, just hit the ground running and really started training pretty hard. And had teams reaching out. A couple teams had kind of given me that seventh round grade. I didn't. I knew I wasn't going to get drafted, but still kind of cool hearing that from
Yeah.
people. And I kind of knew, and with my agent and whatnot too, it was kind of like, um, you know, after the draft is probably when it's going to happen. So I'm going through the whole pro day process. I'm training super hard. I'm kind of having like an idea of what I'm going to, my numbers are going to be, and I think, anticipating them being pretty good. And then, I mean, we all lived through it, but midway through, literally the midway point through our training process, the whole COVID stuff starts to take off, and then next my pro day gets canceled. So the alternative was just to record it, but coming from a small school, um, it's huge for teams to be able to see in person. It just didn't have the same weight, and I think people's numbers were starting to get inflated. So I don't know the credibility of what people were, these videotapes were what teams were. So the draft day comes and whatnot, and I'm waiting till after the draft, the final day, and then I don't get a call. I'm thinking I'm going to go this place, and then it's going to go this place, and then there was some weird stuff going on with the NFL with the amount of guys that they were actually going to let come on to the team for that initial, offseason training and whatnot. But yeah, so then it was just kind of a waiting game. It was kind of like my agent was like, I don't really know what to tell you because this is such a weird, unique situation. We kind of just got to wait it out. I'm still on, talks with teams. We just got to see how things shake out. And then nothing shook out.
Yeah.
So I kind of just, decide, hey, I'm just going to move on from the game. It must just must not, be my path. But didn't sit right with me, in the end.
Yeah. So once again, this all plays out, this all transpires. Got to get a job, right? I mean, you can't just,
Totally, yeah.
chill around. So you get a job and, you're working in the medical world. And for whatever reason, to your point, it just doesn't sit right. And you say, you know what? I think I need to just go live in San Diego, get my training back on and give this thing another chance. And that's not 2 weeks later. That's not 3 weeks later. That's a while down the road, right? And
Yeah, totally.
so talk a little bit about that because I think, there's probably plenty of people that said, Kevin, maybe it's just not for you, like, hey, you had a great career. Maybe I'm putting this in quotes for anyone just listening, you overachieved even, right? Like, hey, you were a walk
Oh,
on,
for sure. Yeah.
started like maybe that should just be enough for you. And you're like, hell no. Like, so talk a little bit about, the, inspiration behind it. And then maybe even some of the, either support you heard or maybe some of the doubters that you heard from too.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think it even goes back to early in the conversation where maybe I'm kind of dumb in a sense where it's like, because that was a fun conversation to have with some of my close friends and family where it's like, hey, the whole football thing, I think I'm going to give another crack. And at this point, I actually had, yeah, left San Diego. I had taken a job up in LA, working full time. And I had been working out, but I wasn't in shape really, to play football and go to compete at that level. So I just, and it's just so funny too. I kind of got lucky, um, in a sense that so I had my eyes set on the 2022 pro day to come back. My school's going to let me come back and do it. But there was like four guys on our team. And then there was one in particular who, shoot, I mean, he had all 32 teams supposed to come out and see him. So that kind of planted the seed in my mind. I'm like, hey, this would be the time to do it. I mean, there's going to be so many eyeballs out there. And even with, and I wanted to experience that whole pro day. And that was the main reason why I was doing it too. Because I was like, my chances of getting a shot are still really low. I haven't played in 2 years, but I wanted to experience that. I want to experience that moment and that, being able to run a 40 in front of 30 NFL teams and be able to feel that, anxiety and that adrenaline rush. So that was the whole thing really doing. I'm like, and of course my goal is to get picked up by a team, but, the main focus is getting super prepared and ready to go for this pro day. And how cool is that? Like, it's like you graduate and, 2 years later, you get to go back to I mean, what guy doesn't want to do that, right? Go back and, get to catch a couple balls and do some, run a 40, do some drills and whatnot at your old alma mater. So I was sold on it from the get go. And then once I, convinced some family and whatnot to like, hey, give me a couple months just to train. Let me just, come back home for a month or two and get ready to go. Took a little bit of time, but, eventually they came around to it. And yeah, so the next thing you know, I'm back into training and whatnot and hit the ground running.
Yes, and so the pro day does go well. Your speed and your performance shows out, and it's like, wow, this is I think it was top 10 wide receiver numbers in overall. So talk a little bit about that, and then just some of the conversations that transpire from there.
Yeah. So yeah, that was an interesting period of time too, because technically I didn't have to wait until the draft in a couple months because I was technically now a free agent. So I could have got picked up the day after the pro day, but kind of the conversations that we had with my agent and other teams that it was probably going to happen closer to the draft. So then I wait the couple months. I'm still training, staying ready to go. Actually, not hearing that much from teams, so I'm a little bit nervous. And then, yeah, the draft comes. Wait till the end of the third day, waiting to hear if I get a call. I don't. And then about a week goes by. So then I'm like, you know what? I went after it. I gave it one last shot. I got to experience pro day. So I'm kind of settling into that. And the next thing you know, my agent calls me on a Wednesday and he's like, hey, would you want to go? You want to go work out for a team? I'm like, is that it? Don't
Yeah.
ask me that question. You already know the answer. So then I ended up getting a workout with the Seahawks and then went up there on the next day, worked out, and then, luckily it went really well and got signed that same day. So
So
yeah, crazy.
you talked about at the beginning, fall in love with the process, right? And not just loving the moment. At the same token, I can only imagine just the sheer feelings and, everything you had in the moment of having the conversation of like, I'm officially going to be on, you know, a roster, right? Like, I mean, you're going to pay me to play football. I've been waiting
Mhm.
for this my whole life. I've been practicing for it. So, talk about that and just, the validation of all the time, the energy, the effort, all the things you said no to, so you could say yes to that. Really getting you to where you had been, desiring to score.
Yeah, and it's which is kind of cool. The whole premise of your podcast, you'll be able to look back and kind of connect the dots. Looking back, it's like I wouldn't want it to happen any other way. It made for a really good story. It's something I could share with people and hopefully, potentially, inspire and influence others. But for myself too, it kind of just it makes sense why it went down this way. And once you kind of get into the building, you kind of understand that hey, this it's still football, but it's more of a business. I kind of knew my longevity of it maybe you know, wasn't going to happen, but uh, being able to kind of go through the whole process of moving on from the game, coming back to it, pushing through, even when it's like there's no clear outcome.
Yeah.
Man, it just made for not only, like I said, a good story, but something that I can hang my hat on and I'm proud of. So, and it kind of fits who I am and my identity as well. So, like I said, it wouldn't want to happen any other way.
Yes. So as you are there, the Seahawks, Pete Carroll, great players around you. Talk a little bit about that. I think one of the interesting things to see is, the discipline, the work ethic, right? All the different elements of players. And as you get to the next level, you see that heightened even more, right? And you see that heightened
Mhm.
even more and what people are able to accomplish. So maybe talk about, one or two either stories that stick out or just, maybe things you learned or were able to see from your stint with the Seahawks.
Yeah, totally. And it was funny too. So I showed up. They bring all because they kind of were considering me to be a rookie since that was really my first year. So we came in kind of midway through all the off-season training stuff, and I'm not getting a ton of reps, obviously, but in that kind of that off-season period, they are trying to kind of see what you got. So I was starting to get a few opportunities, and it was just funny. It's like first off, getting back in a huddle and listening to a play call and trying to relearn basically an offense and an NFL offense for the first time was almost just like it was super weird. I was like, you know what? I was just in surgery rooms, and now I'm back out trying to hear a play call that's super long that I can't even wrap my wrap my mind around. So that was honestly that was a fun experience just in itself. But then I started making some plays at practice, and started doing well, and kind of gave me that confidence, like, hey, you know what? This is a good decision. Give this one last shot, and I can play at this level even after not playing for 2 years. So there was a lot of just good memories and being able to just run routes again, catch the ball, make some plays, and do all that. And then kind of like the same way I took my approach into college, where it's like you show up, don't say too much, put your head down and work. And it's funny. I started to kind of gain some of that respect from people, even in that locker room and people around the building. So that was kind of a rewarding experience as well to be able to kind of get that I don't know, not even praise, but kind of gain that respect from others. Going through that whole process.
Absolutely. So as the football playing, time comes to an end, you decide, hey, maybe there's a business idea that can come from this. And so start cut football. Talk a little bit about the inspiration behind it and what you do with that.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny too, just looking back, kind of seeing this whole process, and even until with cut football as well. I actually had kind of started that first year was kind of actually when I started training again and kind of had gotten the ball rolling with that as well. But and even with my football after college, my football journey I thought so was coming to an end. And you start looking on LinkedIn and you're trying to find a job, and then you see an entry level role that for some reason needs 10 years of experience, and you can't land any jobs, and you're just like kind of struggling trying to get something to be able to start paying bills and doing all that and kind of taking that next step. But I remember just thinking, like, I played football for so long. I played for 10 plus years. That's where my experience is. So how can I leverage my time playing football and kind of what I noticed with either trends or what guys like? How can I leverage that into turning that into a business? And I always kind of, even looking back, like growing up, I always was so into all the gear and all the gloves and all that. I just love football so much. And it's funny looking back on it because it's like, oh man, this is kind of what makes sense. Like this was kind of like my path and what it was turning into.
Yeah.
And and I was kind of starting the brand too. And I've always kind of had a creative side to me where it's like, I've always loved making like videos and edits. I never posted anything. And then I kind of got to that point where it's like, you know what, I'm just gonna start sharing it in my story, with kind of like the social reach on these different platforms. You don't really got to spend too much in advertising. So, maybe start making some content, seeing how that goes. And then from there, just kind of fell in love with all that stuff as well. And now kind of here I am trying to, bootstrap into business, trying to get something to work. And it's just been a really fun process as well.
Absolutely. So talk a little bit about what you focus on within cup football and kind of the, product to market and what you're doing there.
Yeah, totally. So, and that's kind of where I was able to leverage my experience, seeing what guys like, because I wanted to quote unquote, I wanted to innovate in the space because I'd see guys make either, alterations to their gear or trying to achieve a certain style preference. I mean, you have probably in basketball
Yeah.
too. People like to look a certain way when they're going out and competing because the opportunities are so limited that, hey, you know what? I almost think it's like you're like a warrior going out to battle. You got all the battle paint on and all that stuff. That's what guys like. And I think it's funny too, because I don't think people who aren't in sports understand that. There's a
Mhm.
certain way where you dress so you feel comfortable. So you can go out there and compete at your very best. And I just had noticed some trends that guys like. So I started off with, I was like, you know what? I'm going to kind of come out with this unique football sock kind of thing. And because I wanted to be able to grab people's attention and get something out there that was different. And from there kind of started with that, and now we're kind of transitioning more into more you know football gloves and kind of like the main accessories and all that. So it's just, yeah, it's been a real fun process to be able to, which has been allowing me to stay connected to the game as well, and which has been a lot of fun. And now it's like I would rather be doing this than playing, so
Yeah.
which has been a really cool experience.
Well, and something that I think is, once again, anyone listening is hearing it, but I like, want us to just hit the nail on the head here. And that is all of the effort, all of the hard work you put in to your very first point is it's building up that work ethic. It's building up that resilience. And there's no doubt that you're going to have success in whatever it is that you decide to do. Maybe cut football is the next 5 years and it turns into something else, or maybe this is the next 55 years. I don't know. But it's
Hmm.
like all of those wins and all the processes you had to go to get to that next level are all the things that are going to help you get to where you want to go in this next level as well.
Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree more.
I love it. Well, Kevin, I want to say thanks so much for highlighting your story, man, and just sharing some of the unique opportunities that you've had and the things you've been able to accomplish, and excited to just continue to watch your journey. And we'll probably have to record this again in like 3 years when the business is like a direct partner with like NIL deals everywhere and NFL, and see what's going on then.
Totally, let's do it.
Appreciate it, brother.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it.